subscribers. We appreciate your joining us and look forward to collaborating to learn more about Tesla and sort of grow knowledge in general. Today's talk is kind of concentrated on the whole burn rate issue. We have three sort of general areas we'll be discussing. Number one is what is a burn rate and what's going on with Tesla's burn rate, short-term and long-term. Two is why is the burn rate such a big issue right now with Tesla? And then three, sort of how the future looks relative to this and process of understanding and investing in Tesla if you choose to. So the first part of our conversation focuses on the fact that the whole concept of a burn rate was created when many years ago, when venture capitalists were getting rolling. One of the problems you have with smaller companies is when you have a small and growing company, the tendency is for that company to consume a great deal of capital in the process of setting up the business processes that will generate income and earnings in the future. So as a result, they tend to burn through a great deal of capital. Once the infrastructure is set, what's been spent to set up that infrastructure can now be ridden to very long-term and high volumes of profit. Now, what's interesting here is that in the case of Tesla, as Elon Musk pointed out, one of the processes that Tesla explained in terms of what they were going to be doing is the first run was to get the first roadster done. After getting proof of concept shown to the market and investors, Tesla's goal then was to create the Model S and X as a way to have very high-cost vehicles that could show proof of concept and profitability at another level. And the next stage beyond that was articulated was that the plan was to go ahead and go after producing trucks, possibly a roadster, and then the Model Y. So Tesla has really been sticking through its plan of how it was going to grow over time, as well as the capital needs that are associated with that. So what's fascinating to me is that Tesla has been marginally profitable over the last few years once the S and X got going, but the ramp up to build the Model 3 between the Gigafactory, the building out of the charging network, etc., have consumed a great deal of capital, and that capital far exceeds what the company is making. So in theory, Tesla has a loss, but if they had chosen to just do the Model S and X, they could be a nicely profitable company that stayed small and didn't have much of an impact. The issue, though, is instead of doing that, Tesla is doing everything from solar farms, they're doing battery packs, they're doing cars, and you could even think about the fact that unlike GM, etc., Tesla is not only providing the cars, it's providing the fuel for those cars in the form of electricity, etc. So I'm bringing all this up because I'm bringing all this up, and by the way, there was an ambulance, because the bottom line is that Tesla is pretty actively using capital to grow. And so in some ways, Tesla is a fairly large company with a $50 billion market cap, and they do have profitability with the S and X. So in theory, they shouldn't really have to use new capital to fund other activities. The reality is that those other activities are 500,000 cars a year instead of the 100,000 they're producing now. So you have a big company that's operating kind of like a small company in terms of the amount of capital they're using to build out a system so they can do their business. So what I'm fascinated by is, just like with Obamacare versus the Affordable Care Act, when you say a big company is investing to grow, a la Amazon or Google or some of these other companies, not so much of a burn rate, it's really investment to grow. But if you put the term burn rate on it, it starts to make it sound dirty, and that the executives don't know what they're doing, and they're about to go out of business, and are they doing something crazy behind the closed door with that money instead of spending it on growing the company? So the answer with Tesla is, I think they have a lot of initiatives that are really cool that they're working on, and all of them take capital, and I think it's an excellent use of capital. So do a lot of other investors. This brings up the issue of tranches of investors. There's a group of patient investors called institutional companies. For example, T. Rowe Price is one of them who made a comment that was positive about Tesla today. They're very patient and don't say much unless there's major catastrophes going on with the company. When it comes to the hedge fund managers, though, these are a group of people who make a lot of money helping to push stock prices down or up. In the case of Tesla, there's a huge amount of money that's being lost as Tesla does well. So I really feel like these folks are panicking and trying to find ways to force the stock price down with the power they have to control the press in doing so. Now, what I find interesting here is the fact that, there's a lot of interesting points to all of this, but basically 80% of the folks out there who are institutional investors and car owners and folks that want to see Tesla succeed have no problem with what's going on. They can see finished products that validate the money that's being spent as investments. One other point about this whole thing is that you notice that GM and some of the other big companies aren't doing this kind of investment, and the reason is that, for one, I think the American manufacturers are in trouble because they need gigafactories in order to compete against Tesla and other global players, and they're not doing it, which is unfortunate. So guess what? GM and Ford are not investing, and they're dying, given where everything is going relative to electric. So that's what's really fascinating, is that everybody wants the safety of companies that don't invest very much, but they want to make money, and you only make money if there's growth in earnings and profits. And so that's what Tesla represents. And so there's sort of a bifurcation that's going on right now that's relatively difficult for people to handle. So especially people who are losing money as the stock price rises. So what do I expect to occur? I believe that Tesla is going to bring out the Model 3 successfully and then work to use the capital that's gained from that to actually go on and produce the trucks, etc. What I also expect is that the burn rate will get worse, if you want to call it that, or the investment rate will get worse, only because at this point they're just dealing with cars. Soon they're going to be dealing with a supercar as well as trucks and possibly a pickup truck. So, and they also have to build 2 gigafactories, so I believe the amount of capital being consumed will actually increase rather than decrease, even though they will be making money on the products that are being delivered in the short term. The final note that I wanted to make here on this whole situation is the fact that, it's amazing to me that people want to see a company make money and they want to see that company invest, but at the same time they assume that they can get factories built and then vehicles, etc., built without spending money to do so. So one last category that I think is fascinating in business is something called stick value. So I've been doing some calculations, and if you think about it, Tesla's main factory is 370 acres of prime land in the middle of Silicon Valley. The value of that in other uses, I think, is about $10 billion, maybe even 15. The Gigafactory is costing about $5 billion to build, but I think you're getting triple or quadruple the value of that in a year in batteries once that thing is put to work. So as a result, let's call it 15 billion, that's $30 billion right there between those two entities. Now let's say there's charging stations, the supercharging stations, there are 1,000 of them out there, and then they've got other non-superchargers, but chargers. That stuff, I believe, is worth, it costs somewhere around $2 billion to build, $2.5 billion. In theory, I think that stuff is worth at least that, but I think it's maybe worth double what they paid for it because of how, customers have responded to having access to it and the impact it has on the brand and the utility to the customer. So let's say that's another $5 billion. We haven't gotten into patents and all that stuff, and now we're up to $35 to $40 billion worth of value. And so it's possible that Tesla actually might be what's called a value stock, which is when you have the amount that the company's worth in terms of raw assets is equal to its market cap. It's a value stock because if something went bad, you could get your money back in the process of any of those items being sold off. So as a result, it doesn't really make it, when it's a value stock, it's not really a burn rate anymore. It's just smart investments. So I hope you guys will take some time to think through this, listen. It's not as fun as some of the other stuff that we've been covering, But I think it's important to understand how and what Tesla is doing and what the implications are and some of the players and what people are doing and thinking about. I want to thank you for taking time out to watch us once again. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Tschüss, mach's gut. Lehitraot, Hoda Hafez. We look forward to your input. But unfortunately, if you say mean stuff or start cursing, I will block you. But we will definitely welcome your input. Thanks again and have a great day. Bye for now.